Alrighty, guys. I just checked, and the video I just recorded does work, so I'm not going to have to watch the replay and go over it again. I actually tried to record without checking how much space I had left, and it had been a while since I uploaded, but not a while since I recorded. I had a few games banked that I eventually decided I didn't want to upload. Um, as I said in my previous, or probably at the same time video, since I'll be uploading them together. I haven't uploaded for a little bit. I've been busy with some other things, but I have seen all your questions and comments and concerns and things like that, and I have been reading a little bit up on what you guys are talking about. I'll give you my opinions on it, and that's what the point of this is right here. I think one thing I didn't mention in that last game is why I chose not to pyroblast the wheel at the end, but I think that was kind of obvious. And that the entire graveyard's getting set for Yogg-Wheel, and we actually wants the wheel to go through. We just didn't want to take all the damage from it, etc. But they ended up just scooping to Yogg-Wheel plus Duress. Um, I was just deciding which line was the best to kill them with. That being said, we're just going to get into a couple things here. The first card I want to talk about here. Am I still lagging for some unknown frickin' reason? Dear God. See if there's something else running in the background that's... I mean, it was working before. No. Control Delete does not bring up fraps. What is eating my memory here? Well, we'll close BattleNet. Yeah, we'll close Chrome. We'll close some things and see if that helps at all. I don't have Tor open, do I? Don't think so. Guess we can close Handbrake as well. We'll see if that helped a little bit. Yeah. Can I move things? A little bit. It's mostly talking that matters anyway. But let's get this card out here. Um, where are you, dear friend? Let's do it this way. Come on. I know you can do a computer. The first card I was getting questions about was this card. Do I think it is better than Tendrils? No, I do not. I've made that known, but I didn't really talk about the reasons why. First of all, I'm not opposed to you running more kill conditions, especially if you're on a budget. More kill conditions isn't necessarily bad. If you did want to replace a kill condition in this deck, I would rather you place Graveshot than Tendrils. Tendrils is just much better as a kill condition. And if you're looking to play a different kill condition, I would definitely not take out probably one of the more consistent kills in the deck. Because the kill conditions are just that. They're there for winning the game. In my mind, with how the shell works around them, that's what's most important, that they can win the game. And the reason I like this card more than this card is just because there are a lot of hate bear type creatures, tax effects, etc. And some of the strongest things against this archetype of deck that you just want to be able to get rid of. And I actually think this is an excellent way to use as a mini wrath effect, or more importantly, just remove those hate cards. And that's something I'm going to get into a little bit when I talk about the other commander people have been talking about, and why just having these kind of effects is so damn important. Um, but as far as Aetherflux Reservoir goes, both cards could potentially kill a table when you're essentially infinite, which is fine. Um, the idea would be that many people had that Aetherflux Reservoir would be better earlier in the game because it does something that Tendrils cannot do. I'm going to disagree with this first straight out because many Tendrils is very good. I guess it leaves you open to scooping a little bit, in that you might not gain all the life if players choose to scoop your Tendrils, but you have the ability to kill players and gain tons of life with many Tendrils, which is pretty damn good. Um, there are little tiny things like this can be put underneath the Jeleva and still cast, where this just goes away. But the main thing here is if you read this card, it deals damage, first of all, so it's not loss of life, so that opens the door for hate. It's a permanent, so it can be destroyed, so that opens the door for other lines of hate. In short, this card is just better at killing people. Being able to build yourself back up to recast ad nauseum is okay. But other than that, this card isn't really doing a whole lot for you. Its main purpose would be just to use as an engine with both the Necro and the ad nauseum. Perhaps this is a little bit better in Zur, but I don't think that's necessarily good here. We're almost never wanting to cast this early in the game anyway. So the main reason is I see this just as a better kill card, and the side cases of the 1 out of 20 games where we draw this early, where this can be used to a positive effect, to me is not worth making the other 19 out of 20 times when the card is killing the table weaker. So it's pretty simple, right? I don't want the card to be weaker in positions where it's pretty much being intended to be used and being used every single game to try to gain win percentage for some side case that's not going to happen almost ever. It's also worth mentioning that you can grab this card with Mystical Tutor. There are a bunch of other little things like that that in general just makes Tendrils a way better card. This is a fine kill condition. I don't like that you have to pay life. You have to lose 50 life to activate it in the first place. I do play a decent amount of one-on-one where this card is just strictly better. It's not even close. Though this card I guess you could make better if you're playing like Aloro and you're just trying to get to 50 life, or you played some kind of life game, but not really in this shell. This shell aggressively kind of hurts itself quite a bit. So I definitely like this card better than this card, and I still like this card better than this card. And obviously this is a little bit unique since it enables this, and it's just a different kind of win in general. So I will not be playing Aetherflux Reservoir. It's not necessarily horrible if you decide to play it, but no, I don't think it's better than Tendrils. So that was my first order of business. The second order of business that I can kind of tie in with that is Jaleva versus the new commander they released. And I talked about this a little early before the commanders came out. The 4-color commander would have to be absolutely excellent to replace Jaleva. And between the combinations of 2-color commanders and 4-color commanders, a lot of people saw Yidris as maybe the best choice. I think that's how you say his name. It's the guy who, he's similar to Jaleva in that you have to swing to get value, and Zerd for that matter. So you're not getting anything out of him the turn you play him. They both cost 4, and he lets you cascade your spells. So first off, there's a perception that getting to add green makes the deck better. I disagree with that 100%. I mean, you get to play 1 extra fetch land that now only gets your splashed green lands. So I guess it could technically almost most times be pulling island. To make that splash work, you're going to have to play more than 28 lands. So you already have to cut cards for mana sources. The best splash cards you're getting from green, first of all, there's not that many that are worth playing, but the best splash cards are not the regrowth effects. Those aren't even that good. The best splash effect would be like Carpet of Flowers, something like that. Sylvan Library is not so good here. We already use a lot of life-based engines. It's really not as strong as it would be in a traditional control shell. You're really not getting a whole lot from your green splash at all. And to make the green splash work, you have to play more mana sources, which isn't necessarily horrible, but if you really wanted to play more mana sources in the shell, it wouldn't be that difficult to cut cards and add mana sources if you thought that's what the deck needed. I personally don't want to be running more mana sources than I am now. I tried to get the land count as low as possible while still being able to make all my land drops. I feel like if you played Yidris, you'd need at least 30 lands, probably 31. In addition to the fact that the commander itself, now you're going to need 4 colored mana to cast. You can't use a colorless source. You must have all 4 colors of mana, which means you now need both of your splash colors out, which really messes up your land fetching and how you're going to try to develop your mana, and it just makes it incredibly awkward. And then the card itself, I don't see as better. It's kind of a win more card if you're already going off. It's kind of interesting in that you can't hit cards off your other opponent's decks, but here's the main thing is, when you cast a Jaleva, first of all, there's one way of using it where you want to cast it in advance. And when you're casting it in advance, you're trying to get some kind of shield or to push through counter magic or things like that. And you're trying to pick up the cards like the Time Twisters, the Wheels. You're looking for the Yogg Wills, the Past in Flames, the Factor Fiction, the Ad Nauseam, the Doomsday. You want to hit gas cards off of this. The main part of why you want to run this card in your command zone is you're not looking for cards that supplement your commander so much. You want your commander to supplement the already very powerful deck, which is exactly what commanders that draw cards or dig deeper essentially do. And Jaleva does an excellent job in this. Yidris, by contrast, you can hit cards that whiff, that just don't do anything. And more importantly, even when you're casting your big Haymaker spells, most of the cards lower on the curve aren't more hit. It's not really getting you hit cards. The best you can hope for is something like a cantrip. It can get you more mana, but yet again, you're already playing more mana in your deck, and all of a sudden you've got these proportions that are kind of flooded with a weaker mana base overall because you're trying to play 4 colors. It just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever to be trying to do that. So I almost see it as just worse. I don't really see any point in trying to jam things like regrowth in the shell. And a lot of these shells, the couple decks I've looked over, they're cutting control effects, which is absolutely horrible. Another thing that I think is a major misconception about this deck is that it can't play control or it is bad at the control game. Part of what makes this deck so strong is that it's got a real control game. It's got lots of ways to answer all the potential problems that face this deck, from hate bears to counter spells to stacks to all that kind of stuff. And when you start shaving the control suite to try to just fit more mana cards in for a higher card quality, when your mana is already now harder to use anyway, it becomes quite difficult because right, you got to keep the island count at the right amount, which isn't so difficult because you're adding dual lands. But now you're weaker to like the non-basic land hate effects. At the same time, you're drawing more lands, which is okay for your opening hand, so you're slightly, I guess, less weak to strip mine, but not really so much. I mean, you're still going to be seeing lots of low land hands. Um, but it just makes things incredibly awkward, and there's really no upside. It's not that he's a bad commander. I'm sure you can still play the shell and it'll still be very powerful. But cutting control cards definitely not the way to go. The worst hit cards in this deck are really, there's not too many green hit cards that compare with them. And as far as the mana cards in this deck go, if you want to go, do you really want to splash green to go Signet into Carpet of Flowers? Like, it's not really doing so much for me. That doesn't excite me at all. And even worse, if you're going Signet into Nature's Lore or something like that, now all of a sudden something that you could have cast off Soul Ring or made it a little bit easier to work off a lighter mana base, all of a sudden you now need your splash color to fix your mana. Like, that doesn't really make sense. That just seems incredibly awkward to me. So in general, no, I don't think the new commander is any better. I haven't really made a whole lot of changes to this deck. The other card someone asked me about, what was it? Paradoxical Outcome, which actually has seen some play in Vintage, which is something that always piques my interest quite a bit. However, this is not Vintage. I'm not playing tons of Moxes. It doesn't quite fit into this build. It's a little bit one more. It's a little high on the curve for an ad nauseum card. I could see that seeing play in something like Teferi. I haven't tested it in Teferi yet, but I kind of have an interest in testing it there. But as far as Jaleva goes, I don't really think it fits the bill either. So this new commander set really didn't give me a whole lot of cards that excited me. Magus of the Will, getting a second Yawgmoth's Will effect is great for maybe some decks or something more casual, but it now has the problem of it. You have to wait another turn, and it costs a total of 6, not 3. It's not really Yawgmoth's Will anymore. Still a very, very powerful effect, obviously, but it's not good enough to go in a deck of this caliber, in my opinion. So I haven't made any changes to this deck recently. Those are my opinions on the last two, I guess, things that have happened recently that I've seen tons and tons of questions about. I've had a ton of people ask me about Aetherflux Reservoir and the new commander, and in general, I just don't think they're any better at all. In the case of Aetherflux Reservoir, I don't think it's as big of a deal, but in general, I think it's worse. In the case of trying to use Yidris and cut control effects for side grade green hit splash cards and more mana sources and messing the proportions up, I actually think is incredibly bad. And I think it just gets even worse as people try to play cards to make the Yidris itself better that just aren't as good in general. Like trying to play the Lotus Bloom and the Ancestral Recall Suspendee type card, things like that. I mean, those cards aren't horrible cards, but they're not great. And they're not something that you would see someone playing in a Vintage shell, if you know what I mean. And this is a Vintage format, and I think that just makes it even worse. And the further you go down that rabbit hole and dilute the original deck, I think you're just getting further and further away from the point. I will say that this deck is definitely very difficult to pilot, and I think if you're playing more hit cards and less control, it might be a little easier for you to go off, which could be nice for like a novice of the deck. I haven't delved into how adding extra colors or doing those things work on a budget. I haven't really been thinking about budget concerns a whole lot with these type of things. But I would think if you're on a budget, you don't want to try to use a more expensive and difficult mana base. But the main thing is definitely don't cut control cards. One of the best things about this deck is you get to play some of the most powerful control cards in the format. You have a lot of cards that are dual purpose. Something as simple as the most recent card I did at Unsubstantiate. It's been incredible that I can almost use this as a hard counter because of how often I wheel. Oh, and there's one other thing I wanted to touch on. A lot of people talk about how much the deck relies on this card and this card. I don't know how many of my games you guys have watched, but that's absolutely not true at all. Not only do I not use these cards as much as I think other players do, I think they kind of get a kind of tunnel vision. I think that makes them maybe pilot the deck a little less than optimally. But I would much rather than ban, as far as making this deck good, banning this card wouldn't necessarily be a problem. Banning this card would not be a problem. This is a Yawgmoth's Will deck. This is the card you got to worry about. And as far as that thing goes, the Time Twister, Where's my other guy here? Windfall to a lesser extent, and mainly the Time Twister and Wheel of Fortune. I lean way more heavily on these cards. This is potentially why I say it's a huge blow losing Time Twister. Losing Time Twister is almost as big as a blow as losing Ad Nauseam. These cards are very similar as for how big of a blow your deck is taking. Um, like it's definitely an Ad Nauseam deck, and you want to be able to win off the Ad Nauseam. It's a great line to have. But this card's cost 5, and these are 3. And getting out of that first phase is almost more important. And this is a deck that does not require either of these 2 cards to go off. Not true at all. Part of the reason Graveyard Hate is so good against the Storm deck is because you have the Yawgmoth Well. These kind of cards are the reason that it doesn't just completely slaughter you like it does a fully graveyard-based deck, because you have other ways to win. You can even build your graveyard the turn of if they've already used that Graveyard Hate, or if it's a Graveyard Hate that can be bounced, like Rest in Peace or something like that. You can, in your line or through tempo, get rid of that card and then still make use of the Yawgmoth Well and stuff like that. Or even use it early or something like that. But yeah, Graveyard Hate's good against this deck. Not as much of a death blow because you've got these cards. But yeah, I don't think it really leans so much on these cards if you're using the deck correctly. And every single table is different. Sometimes you want to sit back and play control. I don't agree with the idea that you always want to be going fast. Sometimes it's very, very good to be going slow. This deck actually plays excellent into the late game, and that's why I'm saying it leans so heavily on these cards, because really all you have to do is get out of the opening 3 turns and refill your first time, and you're in a position where your lines of winning are just so much cheaper than everyone else's that you can kind of sit back and play control, or you can try to go off. You can kind of read the table and do almost anything what you want. You're weakest in those first couple turns where you're developing your mana, and after that, you're an incredibly robust late game deck. With answers to nearly everything. It's typically the first refill gets you out of trouble, and then the second refill, no matter what it is going to be your game-ending card. Or even if you're not ending the game, you're putting yourself at a massive advantage. You can even kind of try to play a control-type game. The deck scales very, very well into the late game, and I think people get a lot of tunnel vision playing this deck, or they just can't see all the possible lines. And I don't know. I just take some time and practice, and the more you play it, the more you'll be better with the deck. But I haven't really made a whole lot of changes to this deck, and it doesn't really need me, to be quite honest. I've played it in my paper again recently, just a few times, and I had one night, I think, where I only won 1 game. And the table wasn't just a bad matchup for me, but I had won so much the previous night. I was getting turn 1 strip mined again. That is about the most effective way to shut this deck down. When people are saying F you turn 1 and 2, and instead of going, oh, he's got a weak hand, I can worry about someone else. They're going, oh, he's got a weak hand. Let's kick him now while he's down before he has a chance to get back up, because I don't know if I can stop him later. And that really is an effective way to deal with this deck. So I hope this answers a couple of the questions you guys had about the new commander and the new possible kill condition you can use. Other than that, I guess someone wanted to say something about why I chose Pactum Negation, and I told him he could cut Counterspell or something else instead. And the main reason I chose to cut the Pactum Negation over something like this, I think I mentioned in my previous video, throughout my testing I really haven't missed it. Almost every time I've made a pile with Doomsday where I would have used Pact, I've had the mana to cast Swan Song. I can't think, maybe been one time, maybe 1 or 2 times where I wish I could have had the Pact in the pile, and both those times my opponent didn't have the answer I would have needed it for. So far it's had a relevance count of 0, whereas having Counterspell and Substantiate my opening hand to gain tempo has been incredibly good. So yeah, I'm totally happy with that change as well. So hope you guys enjoyed this. Moxnix